last week of Consider This Simplifying the COVID-19 Conversation. My co-host, Dr. Heidi Beidinger, and I have just been delighted hosting this series for you this semester. We hope you found it informative. This last meeting, we're going to be kicking it off with a reflection of the fall semester with our guests Shannon Cullinan, the University of Notre Dame's Executive Vice President, and David Bailey, the Vice President for Strategic Planning and Institutional Research. Both of these individuals have been instrumental in implementing the COVID-19 interventions on campus this semester, and they're intimately associated or acquainted with all of the data. So I thought I would start off by reminding you all about the here.nd.edu website, where I'm sure most of you are looking at the dashboard, which we'll talk about in a little bit. But I just wanted to highlight that we have a whole lot of information that's available there, including updates on the facilities and outdoor spaces that are available for not only students, but faculty and staff, as well as updates on policies. So as we go into the spring semester, it's here.nd.edu where you can find all of the updated information. So here's a picture of the dashboard, and I've put the entire semester on there. And you can see how the cases in the green line started to accumulate over the semester. And I'll just note this is a 7-day moving average, which I'll talk about in a little bit. To remind everyone, the gold bars are the number of positives reported on a particular day, and the gray bars reflect the total number of testing that was done on a particular day. Excuse me. So at this juncture here, on this day, there's over 2,000 tests were conducted. The light gray bars represent the nasal swab tests, and the dark gray bars represent saliva testing. So we have two different kinds of testing, diagnostic tests, and the diagnostic tests are all swab-based nasal swabs, and a combination of nasal swab testing that's done by PCR at an outside laboratory, as well as antigen testing on campus. And then we have surveillance tests. So these are individuals that are asked to come in and be tested, and they aren't showing any symptoms. And these mostly involve the saliva testing, but also can include some nasal swabs as well. And what you can notice from this particular view is that we started saliva testing in September, and then that testing capability has been growing throughout the semester. And now saliva tests make up a bigger proportion of the total number of tests that are conducted on campus. So in terms of surveillance tests total through the whole semester, we've conducted over 77,000 surveillance tests, and that includes the nearly 12,000 pre-matriculation tests that identified 33 positives. So let's look at this particular view here. I find this one a little bit more informative. Again, in the gold bars, we have the number of positive cases on a particular day and the saliva tests that were conducted on a particular day. Sorry, tests, including saliva and nasal swabs. And here's that over 2,000 day test that I indicated in the previous view. The green line is representing a 7-day moving average of positive cases on that particular day. And so I'll talk about how that's calculated in a minute. But what looks striking here is, wow, that's a huge number of tests or number of positive cases here at over 2,000. Well, we never reached over 2,000 cases. So actually what I want to point out here is it's actually the axis on this side where you would determine that. And this number actually reflects around 53. So what can we see from this view? We can see that we've had a couple of times, once early on and once later in the semester, where we seem to have an outbreak or an uptick in particular cases. This particular view does not show the tests, but it just zooms in, if you will, at the number of positive tests in a day. And here's that 7-day average that we were given, I gave you previously. So why would you look at a 7-day average? Well, this is often done when studying economics, because it allows you to look at the trend and sort of ignore any anomaly that might happen. And you might imagine that some particular day nobody came in for testing, so we didn't have any positives, or the lab didn't report any positives or something like that. And so you wouldn't want to make decisions just based on one particular day. And so it's really good to look at the average trend as well as the number of positive days. And our leadership is looking at tracking both of those numbers through the semester. So how is that determined? Well, what it does is takes the number of positive tests in any given day. And for this case, it's a 7-day average. So it takes the 7 previous days. All of those numbers in red add up to 376. You divide that by 7 and you get the number 53.7. So let's go back to this particular view here where we can see the 7-day moving average and the number of tests as well as the positive on a specific day. So we have that outbreak that happened early in the semester around the football game. And then there's this other outbreak that looks like it was happening around the Clemson football game. But what the Clemson game was on November 7th, as you can see here. And certainly we were starting to get upticks of cases prior to that, likely due to pandemic fatigue and people letting their guard down a little bit. Prior to the Clemson game, every student on campus was tested through surveillance testing or diagnostic testing. So the week prior to that, all students were tested. So a total number of 7,726 tests were performed, and we found 204 positive. Most of those were from the diagnostic tests. Now, I can't be sure if all of these were students because I'm taking this data just from what's available on the here.nd.edu website. And these particular bars do not break down how many were students, how many were staff, etc. But what I can tell you is that all of the positive tests were not allowed to go to the football game, at least for the students, and that we were seeing an uptick of cases prior to the football game. So it's hard to say that it was the Clemson game that actually resulted in this uptick of cases. So the next thing I wanted to talk about was exit testing, because everyone's really concerned about maybe positive tests of students going back to their home communities and bringing the virus with them. So exit testing was required of all students before they left campus, and it was conducted on November 12th through the 21st, although it's my understanding that most of those were a little bit later on. And I kind of blew this up for you to look at. And so again, these are the number of saliva tests, and these are the number of nasal swabs. And you can see that the majority of the testing was done by saliva. And in terms of nasal swabs, some of those were diagnostic tests and some of those were surveillance testing. And those surveillance testing are shown here in green. So from surveillance testing, not many positive cases were identified. That's shown here in red. And the vast majority of cases that were identified came from diagnostic testing. So I summarized all of those numbers here. And out of the nearly 14,000 tests that were performed during that week, there were 251 positive cases. Rest assured, those particular students that came in for testing, either from because they have symptoms for diagnostic testing, or they were a close contact. None of them, they all quarantined or isolated before going home to their home communities. So again, thanks for joining us this semester, and that's all I have for now. So I'll see you on Monday.